The Groups tool in Brightspace allows you to organize either individual or clusters or the entire group of users within a subject site into distinct teams for different purposes. So they can impact either the entire group of students, staff, it could be restricted to particular cohorts of students. It's quite a powerful tool for organizing the members of your site into smaller teams. Now we access the Groups tool in one of two ways. Students are able to find the Groups tool by going into the Communication menu and selecting Groups, whereas members of the teaching team will be able to actually go into the Subject Admin area and locating underneath Learner Management, Groups launches the same tool. For the student view, they'll only be able to see the groups that they're enrolled in, so they can't create their own groups. But for academic staff, it will open this dashboard called Manage Groups. So we'll have a look at the Manage Groups dashboard, which starts with this button here, New Category. Now, a new category effectively means a group set, if we're using the old language from Blackboard, which means a collection of one or more groups for a specific purpose. So if I create a new category here, a new set of groups, we'll start with a sample name. Don't worry about the description, it's not visible to the users by default. Then we get into arguably the most important area, the enrollment type. An enrollment type in the group context effectively means how we want people to be added to groups. So in some instance, with the first one, for example, we're talking about a specific number of groups which are manually enrolled. So the teacher will be the one adding the users into the groups, hence no auto enrollments. Then we have a number of auto enrollment options. So groups with a specific number of users in them. So a cap. So if I wanted groups of 5, and it would automatically split the entire group of students into those groups. Or a specific number of groups, again auto-enrolled, so it would take all of the students and split them into one or more groups. Then we have groups with a cap and they enroll themselves, which means they'll be able to see them underneath the group's area and join groups. Then we have a specific number of groups that they can add themselves to. So in that first scenario I just mentioned there, if we had groups of 5 self-enrollment, then once it hit 5, the students would no longer be able to see one of those full groups to add themselves to. They'd only be able to see the ones with spaces available. Then we have a couple more. We've got a specific number of groups with a cap and they enroll themselves. So that's basically a first in best dressed scenario. Let's say 10 groups with 5 in each, which means that after 50 students have added themselves to those groups, there'll be no more groups for anyone else to join. So that's a first in, best dressed type scenario there. And then lastly, we have an option called single user member specific groups. And what this does is it will create around every student in the subject their own group with no one else in it. So just one user in those groups. And that's quite a specific use case there that we use when we have assessment areas like discussion areas where we don't want anyone outside the group to be able to see the assessment submission. So for example, students making discussion board posts that we don't want other students to see, the way that we can restrict that is to make it a group assignment where we use this type of group. So every student is their own group. So it's quite a niche case there. So we might go through the process of in fact just creating a group here. So I'm going to create groups of 5. We'll say 5 users in each group, and it will automatically split up the entire student body in the subject by default. So if I had 200 students, then it would split them up into 40 different groups with 5 students in each. But you'll notice underneath we have this option to restrict enrollments. And at that point, by default, it's going to be available to everybody. So it will affect all students. But if you do this within your subject site, it will automatically pick up on the sections or the cohorts of students that you have inside that site. So if I wanted to create a setup of groups just for Bathurst distance students, for example, then I would choose restrict enrolments to Bathurst distance, and then it will only create groups affecting those students. So you can limit it. You'll notice as well underneath it has the option to determine what the prefix for the group names will be. Otherwise, by default, it'll just take a standard approach like group 1, group 2, group 3, etc. With a prefix, it will put that at the beginning. So we might use this scenario and see how we go. And then we have some advanced properties in the groups tool. The first one, you probably want to check auto-enroll new users, which will mean if you get students added in after you've created these groups, they will also be affected by this setup. So late enrollments also added into groups at that point. So you may want to check that. Randomizing your users means instead of organizing the groups alphabetically, so the first 20, A to Z, and then the next 20, then the next 20, etc. If you randomize, it's not going to take that approach. If you do want them to be split alphabetically, then you would need to uncheck this. And I mentioned before that the actual name of the category and the description are not visible to group members by default. They can only see their own group name and the other members of the group. But if you want them to see the name of the category and that description up the top, you would need to check that box. Lastly, we have a series of tools that you may want available to group members. So do you want this group to have its own discussion area? Do you want group members to have a file sharing space, a locker space, which will give you, I think it's 5 megabytes per student member. I could be wrong, but that will certainly give you a shared file space for group members to share files in, and academics will also be able to see the files in that space. And then we also have an option here to set up assignments. However, I'm going to steer you away from that option because normally with group assignments, we would create the assignment first, and then if it needed to be for particular groups, we would then create those secondly. We create our assignments in the assignment area first, then work back to this point. So what I might do in this instance is I will give my group members a locker area to share files, but I'm not going to give them a discussion area at this point. If we hit save, it's now creating the groups in the background. I can hit OK. And now it tells me we've created 2 groups. So remembering that I set a cap of 5, there mustn't be more than 10 Bathurst distance students in this particular subject. And as it created 2 groups within that category, it's also created 2 lockers for those group members to share. Let's hit done. We'll have a look. Now underneath my Manage Groups dashboard, it shows me those 2 particular groups that have been created in this category. I can click on the members here to identify who's been enrolled into the group. So it just gives me a summary. I can't do any editing here. Or I can, in fact, select the name of the group, and I could then make changes to the group name if I wanted to. So you can see here it's taken that prefix, Bathurst distance, and then just added a 1 for group 1, but you could change this to whatever you like. You're also able at that point to add additional users to this individual group if you needed to. View enrollment will give us that same box showing us who's in there. Now what I'll do is hit cancel to go out of this group to show you another feature. Over here on the right hand side, we can see the locker or the shared file space that I've created for these group members. So if they have been sharing files in here, the teaching team members and the group members can go in and have a look at the files that have been shared, or indeed add additional files using upload files in here, for example, to provide that file to all of the group members. And you'll see here it has in fact added almost 50 megabytes of shared space. So if there are 5 members, nearly 10 megabytes each, that it's then allowed for that shared space. Let's go back to our Manage Groups dashboard, and I'll show you another feature. If you're wanting to see the membership or the people that are enrolled into all of the groups within this category, you can check this box at the top. And at that point, when we actually hit the drop-down arrow next to the title of the category, if we go to Enroll Users, it will now show me all of the students within the subject and which group they have been allocated to. So remembering that we restricted these groups that we created to Bathurst distance students, this list still has all of the rest of the students in the subject as well. So keep that in mind if you are restricting groups to particular cohorts. But this function would also allow me to check and uncheck users and distribute them across between groups if I needed to. So yes, it has split them up automatically as per my instruction, but if I wanted to then make changes, if I wanted to move Marianne, for example, from this group to this group, I could go check and check. And now that student has been allocated into a group. And I can see with this icon next to these student names that they have been put into a group, whereas these other students are not in any of the groups. And I suspect that is because they are not Bathurst distance students, so they weren't affected by that initial creation instance. If we hit save, it will now save those new members, and I can see up the top it's tallying how many are in each. So if I took Beck away from this one and added her to here, I can now see this group has 5, this group has 2. So you can modify the enrollment quite easily across all of your groups simply by selecting that checkbox at the top of your Manage Groups dashboard and then going to Enroll Users. Similarly, if you need to add more groups into this setup, you could hit the drop down and add groups. If you needed to delete individual groups or indeed delete the category itself with all of the groups involved, you can use this delete function here. Otherwise, if you were wanting to remove an individual group, you would check the box next to that group name and then you could hit this delete key, and then that would remove that group from your category, your collection of groups. So it's quite powerful. In setting up groups in Brightspace, once you have them in there, it gives you a way of restricting either communication, content, or assessment to that particular group. So for example, if I was going to make a new announcement that I only wanted to go to a particular group of students, when I create an announcement, one of the options we have is release conditions, and you'll see this same option against your content and against your assessment. And at that point, you can use release conditions. If we create one here and say, for this type of object, so this is an announcement, I want it to refer to the class list group enrollment in this subject, and now it's going to look for groups. And I have created an example group a minute ago called sample groups. And I could now target this announcement to go just to this group of students. Similarly, I could have it going to all of the groups inside that category, sample set of groups. So if I wanted it to go to both of these groups of students, I would choose the category itself. And now it's going to go to both of those groups. So you can target your announcements, your content, and your assessment items at particular groups if you need to as well. It doesn't just have to be done at the cohort level, it can be done at the group level. So groups provide a really targeted way of restricting different parts of your Brightspace subject to different groups of either students or staff. And we do talk about marking teams as one scenario in another clip in this area. So I hope that's been valuable to you. Using the groups tool, really straightforward. I'm going to cancel this. I'm not going to send that announcement. Keeping in mind that you can access it the same way that students do through the communication menu. And that first screen you come into is where you're going to be able to see all of the different groups that have been created inside your subject site. Once you select the right category, then you can start working with the group setup. So I hope that's been useful. Thanks.